So I was working on this thing, and it's actually not released. Ask me at the end why it's not released yet. But I wanted to share it because it was pretty cool, and I had a lot of fun learning it and writing it, and I want to kind of talk you through everything that I learned, including all of the Gory code. So, everything started with this email by Jarkko Hitanami, and he sent this email to P5P, the Profile Porters mailing list, the core devs, and said like, hey, I've been looking at this thing, and I think this might be a micro-optimization pinpoint. Basically, if I call ref on something equals array, something we all use all the time, what it does is compiles it to a string equal against a constant array, string. And I think we can optimize this. It might not be big, but I think we can optimize it. So I was playing with this and I thought, hey, maybe we could do this. I want to show you some code on how this works. We always use this. Assuming I have my foo equals an array here, and you do a print, this pattern that we all use all the time, ref foo equals array, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Then we have it again, yes or no?
No.
No, because there's this small additional a, so it's actually prone to typos, so this would be the correct form. If we change this to a hash ref, it's really hard to know. It's actually changed that over there. Suddenly it's no, unless we bless this into an array class, and then suddenly, oh yes it is. So it's also, it's not just fragile, but it's also susceptible to blessed packages and stuff like that, blessed references. So a nice solution would be, you get foo from whatever, and you check using isArrayRef. And isArrayRef provides a function that is very simple, and you know what it means, you can understand it, and it's so obvious. And maybe we can even implement it in a better way. So, that would include a lot of other references. So isArrayRef, what other stuff do we have? Hashref, that's right. What else? Well, we have scalarref, someone missed that. What was that? Coderef. What else?
Globref.
Globref. Regex, someone also missed, right? Glob. Anything else? IO-ref, format. And then IO. So all of these are available as stuff that you can actually check whether it's references for. Ask me how to generate a reference to a format. That was tough. So, Util tries to provide all of these functions for you. And it tries to implement them in a very interesting way, using excess. I love excess. Excess, it feels kind of like that once you understand it. I've actually looked it up and I found a few more versions of this. I like this one. The one I like the most, which I'm keeping, is this one. And excess gives you a lot of power, but in a way, it also provides simplicity. Some things that seem like they would be very difficult to do in excess are actually much simpler in excess than in pure Perl. Excess gives you access to the data types, the underlying data types of Perl. Take SV for example, short for scalar value. It's a data type for storing anything that is a scalar. It could be a string, it could be an integer, it could be a reference, whatever it is that is just a scalar, will be saved and stored and represented with a scalar value. But the operating word here in data types is typed, which means that I can actually check what is this type. So this is type in Perl SVT, which is a scalar value type, PVAV, which stands for an array, basically. So this is a type that represents a variable that is an array. Always. I know this. There's a flag for it, and you can check it. If you call svType a macro, and you give it a value, it will tell you, is this thing an array or not? There is no reference checking. It just tells you because it is flagged. We can take a reference and call svrv to say, I would like to dereference this, and then say, whatever it is referencing, is that an array or not? Which is the simplest, elegant way to tell you if something is an array or not. There is no reason to string compare it. If we're taking something that is a reference, we can also use svrok to ask, is this a reference or not, before we try to dereference it. Very simple. We can always wrap this and then use two additional macros, access return yes to basically say true, or access return no to basically say no. This is all of the code that you need. A single line with 3 macros, 2 optional responses to tell you if something is an array or not in absolute terms. Not susceptible to any of the problems that we've seen. There are no strings here. There is no check on something that might be blessed, might not be blessed. All that doesn't exist. If we want to provide this as an X sub in excess, which is, oh my god, super complicated, that's it. The code will be here. So we have something that returns an SV, basically saying we return some kind of scalar, which will represent yes or no. It's called isArrayRef. We receive an SV, which would be a scalar, which we will call ref. At this point, Perl will actually generate code that will check whether you received a scalar or not, and croak if you didn't. And the PP code basically says, here's the code that I want to run, use this instead, and SVR if so, SV type, the result of the SVRV. If it's an array, yes, otherwise, no. That's it. Super simple. So I thought this would probably be all of it. Is array ref, is scalar ref, is hash ref. But then someone came up with another idea to make it even faster. Because it wasn't fast enough. Because Perl is actually quite fast in a lot of things that you think it isn't. But in this case, it wasn't that much faster. So we were looking at how to increase, I don't know if the power or insanity of this, but we played with it a little bit further, and you can do really nice stuff in Perl, like custom ops. So there's the op tree, and you can actually generate your own ops and put them in the op tree. And you can do something like take an op and replace it with another op. You can do crazy stuff like that. So that's what we did. I'm going to guide you through the entire process, okay? So bear with me, it's only 72 minutes and we'll be done. So the first thing that we have to do is define an XOP, which will provide our operator. We use XOP entry set to set the description and the name for our op. So if our op is array ref XOP, we have a name, we have description. This will be an entry that helps debug the operator that we have. Then we have to register this. So we use Perl custom op register, basically saying we would like to register a custom operator within Perl. We use ATHX underscore, which basically represents the current context of Perl to support threading. And then we use isArrayRefPP, basically saying this is where we will actually implement this new op. This is the function that we will call. And we provide this descriptor for it. So in debug mode, we can actually know what is the name of it, what is the description of this specific op that we're trying to use. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is create a function, just like the function that I used before. This is a different way to create a function. And we're using this because we want to create one and also return a value representing that function. We're using NewAccess Proto Portable, which provides a way to create an access function with a prototype and receive back a CV. The CV stands for code value. So some kind of variable that represents a code ref, basically. And that code ref will represent the new function that we're going to create now. The first thing that we have to provide is the full name of that function, including the namespace. So here we're creating a function called refutil isArrayRef. We're providing a function here that will implement this. Then we're providing underscore underscore file underscore underscore, which basically helps with debugging, where was it defined. And this is the prototype, $, because that is the prototype for a single argument, which is a scalar. Now, here's the tricky part. Before I show you this line, what we actually need to do is kind of weird. We need to have an isArrayRef function as a function and as an op. And what we're going to do sounds a bit weird, but it's creating a function and then replacing the first time we see that function with a different operator that actually implements this function. Because otherwise it would be a generic operator that runs a generic function. Instead, we want to literally create an op in the op tree, which is much more optimized. So the first thing that we do is create this function, and then we're going to need to replace this function. In order to replace this function, we have to hook up to the time it is called. Luckily, there's a function which is called for every operation, which is a call checker. So we can set a checker, a call checker, to that CV. We call CV set call checker, provide the CV that we wanted that represents this function, which means that now this new function will be called before that function. ck enter sub args is array ref. And this will allow us to replace it with our actual op. We're going to play with the op tree itself. Pretty funky. So the first thing is to see how we're implementing this op. Okay? To implement an op, you have to define a new op, is array ref pp. DSP just declares the stack pointer, so we could play with the stack. The stack will represent arguments in and out. The first thing that we do is pop the stack so we could get our first argument. Then we have this line that you already saw. I'm replacing the excess return with PLSVS and PLSVNo, which are the variables for true and false. And these are not excess function specific, so they will help us in this case. And because this is the entire function, all we need to do is return that to the user. So just like we did pop in order to receive a value, we do a push in order to return a value. So we popped to get something, we're checking it, and then we just push the value of what we decided back on the stack as the return value. And this op needs to know that it actually returned correctly, that everything is fine, so we return normal. That's it. We just wrote an entire operator. But here's the tricky part. We have to replace a function with that op. So we created a function. Because we don't actually want that function to be run, we want that function to be replaced with a new op that we created. What I did in this case is force this function to die in case it is actually run, because it should never really be run. So the implementation is very simple. Just croak, because this function shouldn't be run. I'm using it as a placeholder that I can grab it and then replace. And I don't want that placeholder to really be executed. I want my stuff to be executed. So I make this croak.
Can I
Yes?
That croak, where's that come from?
This is in excess, and one of the functions available in excess is croak.
Ah, thanks.
And then the last part is the biggest part, which takes about 70 minutes of the 72 minutes that I told you about, is how do we then, in the check, pause there, find the op that we want to replace, which is that original function, take that out and put a different op instead, which is what our new call checker will do. Here it is. Don't worry, we're getting close. This is the last part, okay? So bear with me. First we define it, and you'll notice that it sets a few variables that don't really matter, except that it gets the actual op that it's supposed to be running, okay? Because this is a call checker. So it checks on a call the op. Yes? Was that? No, you were coming. Okay. Sorry. All right. So the first thing that we do is run the original call checker, because it might have optimized the op, it might have changed it might have played with stuff. So we call that original one just to make sure that the one we get we can play with. Otherwise, we might skip an operation that is actually important. Once we have one that we can use after calling this, what we need to do is find the parameter to these function. And I've noted this because this is literally in the code because it was my indicator of what needs to be done. We need to move two operations forward. The first operation would be something called a push mark. I'm not going to explain the entire op tree of Perl and all of that types in them. It's very complicated. I don't remember almost all of it. But basically the first operation will be a push mark, and then the second would literally be the argument, which is basically setting up an argument call, like a parameter to a function. It's the whole thing. So we need to move these two ops forward. We're going to get the first op. The second op is actually a list, so we're going to refer to it as a list and then get the second one. I think it becomes a bit clearer with the code itself. So if we have the enter sub op, which is the first operator that we got, the operator that we're supposed to check. And we've already ran the original call checker, just in case. We take this one and we need to move forward. We can't move forward on the pure original struct. We need to cast it to a struct that we can move forward on. Because this is a unary op, we use a macro called C_unop. C_unop allows us to cast this struct. Doesn't allow us, I'm sorry. It casts this struct as a struct that has a next. And we can call op first to get the next one. The next one is a list. So we're going to do the same trick. We're going to cast it to a list so we can move forward on that. We're using C_list_op instead of unary op. And we do the same thing. Call the next on that. So we just took the op over here. Using this, we were able to move forward. Then using this, we were able to move forward to the next one. And get the sibling of it, which will be the actual argument. At this point, we're changing the sibling of this argument to a null, so nothing will actually get executed after this point. We create a new operator using new unary op. It starts with null. We change it to a custom op. We provide our function instead as the address that the operator should go to in order to execute code, which means that this new operator, once we return it, since we replace the arg, since it replaces the current op, I'm sorry, the enter sub replaces the op. If we return this from our call checker, this will replace the op and we can basically get our function called instead. So we just return it. That's it. That is it. So I think it showcases some really interesting abilities in Perl 5. Custom ops, interestingly enough, were actually added in Perl 5.8. I looked at it. But the CV set call checker that we're using and the XOP entry, like a lot of these bits, they were actually added in 2010. There's a phrase on something with great power, something. So I think there's we did want to be able to support situations in which you don't have a Perl that is that recent, like only 5 years. Who knows? Red Hat is still, what, 27 years back? I don't know. So what we did in this case is add a define here, basically checking in a macro, do we have custom ops or not? If we have custom ops, then we do this crazy whole thing using all these functions. And if we don't, we'll just use this thing. And this will be at compile time. So when you install this, it compiles it, it decides which Perl you have, what you can support, and then either compiles the module for you with the custom op implementation or compiles the module with the regular XS functions implementation. That's it. That's it. Before I go to questions, I do have a lot of thank yous that I have to provide. Gonzalo helped a lot, Andreas, Mattia, Rafael, Eve, Yarko, people who are very active in the club, people who are very helpful, who are pushing not just how to implement something, but also kind of pushing to understand how to implement something and how it works. And I've gained a lot from these people, and I want to thank them. Special thanks goes to Vikenti, which literally explained this whole thing to all of us, and is always really helpful. And one last thanks to the club, one before last, where we actually play with a lot of these things, and I get to work with really cool people and learn. And it's a very good learning experience if you want to join. It's not necessarily booking specific, so if anyone wants to join, talk to me. And of course, I want to thank you for your patience and actually reading through this without starting to cry and yelling, screaming, running. So I appreciate that. And does anyone have any questions?
Benchmarking.
Yeah.
Benchmarking. Unfortunately, it was not as fast as I had hoped, because the operation itself, even in pure Perl, is not a heavy operation. It is not complicated in Perl, or let me say differently, it is not awkward, difficult, or slow in Perl to do stuff like string equal check. So it didn't provide a massive gain. If you're working on something that is blessed, because it uses magic, and this one doesn't, and doesn't care about magic or not, it will be faster. Much faster, but not necessarily substantially faster. It will be much faster than if it's not magical, if it's not blessed, but not necessarily that, like, I'm going to replace everything with it. I think the biggest gain for this is, whether you're using the custom op implementation or the regular implementation, is that you have a function that is very explicit in what you're trying to retrieve from it. It's not susceptible to typos. Regex, if you're going to do ref on a regex, it's not all uppercase, for example, who remembers. Does it have a P or it doesn't have a P at the end? So it's a bit, these things are a bit confusing. Brian Defoy recommended even to do a ref and then store that and then compare it that way. Or to do a ref this equals ref empty array. Then you know it's an empty array because it will be the same string, because the regex confuses people. And in this case, it provides one function, or a bunch of functions, but one function for each case that is very clear. I think the problem that I wanted to solve with this is that doing a ref foo and an equal is a very roundabout way to verifying a very particular flag on a variable. Like, it's a variable, it's a struct, it has a flag, what's the problem? So I think that would be the game. I hope that answered your question. And I had to say a bunch of other stuff I really wanted.
Nobody's wanting.
Yes.
Why haven't you released it?
Oh, okay. I haven't released it yet because there are a few more things I want to do. The first one is, a lot of the code repeats itself because it really is the same code, just for different references. And I want to change that with some macros to just kind of remove that part. And I did get a mini tutorial. I'm not that strong with macros. I'm still coming back to C. And a lot of thanks to Gonzalo, who was very patient with my me coming back to C and relearning it. And Eve gave me a mini tutorial on macros, so I'm going to play with that and hopefully be able to release it. And I think there was one more idea for an optimization from Stefan Mueller, which I need to double check. So hopefully when I get those done, I'll release it and start seeing where I'm failing with it. And I'm going to submit it to P5P. I don't think it will get approved, but I'll submit it anyway. Maybe. Maybe if it will get approved, it will be in court. Hey, imagine that. Yes?
You can, well, I kind of get the feeling that all the hoops you have to jump through in order to inject the op and the op tree is more of a shortcoming of Perl, and that there should be a documented way of doing this without having to register and wait until it's called and then move the rug underneath the feet and blah, blah, blah.
So there are other ways. You can define a keyword. You can use the optimizer directly. There are a few situations. This is the one, I don't know if using the optimizer in this case is applicable, but you can define a keyword, for example.
Keywords can do the same.
They do the same switch in and out?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, unfortunately Perl does have a lot of background, and with that a lot of baggage on how things are done. I didn't find that cumbersome once I understood it.
Yeah, of course, I mean, anything after you understand it.
Yeah, true, but that's like
It's a lot of
almost
dancing.
everything that I do in general. So
Okay.
I wish there was a better way. Maybe it's waiting for someone to come in and go, this is silly. Let me try and provide a different interface to that. So let me give you the P5P mailing list and
Okay.
yes.
So the way the op was registered was by hooking into enter right?
Hooking into the call chair.
The call, okay, so does that run on every single time an enter sub op comes up in the tree? Or is it specialized?
Where is it, Kenty? I'm trying to
so I'm
remember.
wondering because you were thinking, maybe it's
No,
faster,
it isn't because, I think it isn't because what it actually does is replaces the occurrence of it in, I'm trying to remember if it's on every time it finds it. I want to say it isn't, but I don't remember enough to back that up.
Okay, great. Well, I was just basically, I originally went this way because I thought it'd be maybe faster than having.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who
access.
told me it would be faster. It is faster, but not by a lot.
Well, I guess what I was
Not
wondering
much
is
measurable.
if we're basically adding a check to every single enter sub op, doesn't that also kind of add overhead to every single subcall everywhere?
Comparing that with the, I'm not sure that it does, but either way, it was faster than the X sub itself, but not by a lot.
Can you put a number to that, like faster, like twice as much?
No, not twice as much. It's just shaving a little.
Okay.
10%.
I don't want to throw 10%. I don't remember. Unsubstantiated statistics is the worst possible. It's also the most common, but it's also the most.
Your second question.
Yes.
How do you get reference to a format?
How do you get a reference to a format? Excellent question. I should give a talk about it, and then hopefully by then I'll learn. If you check the testing suite of ref util, the only thing that is missing it has to do is create a format ref somehow. There is I think that I found an example. I think I found it in one of the codes, or I found it somewhere. I think an example. You have to define something, and then you have to create something, and then you change something. It's like one time, and it's like you have to play with standard out. I don't even remember. I was really afraid of doing
The
it.
solution to your problem is our hash of format refs.
Yeah, formats are a very very old feature that I think should not actually stay. Yes.
How bad of an idea would it be to try to use this to enforce method type checks?
Could
Limited.
you expand on that?
Well, if I have arguments to a method and I want to say I expect this to be an array, this to be a hash ref,
So
like for
here's the thing. If you want to check if this is an array, you can do that with prototypes. That's actually what they're used for. And almost always it bites you back, because in most cases people want a list and not an array, and now it has to be an array, so you screw
Well, no, you're talking about array refs, because then they would just.
But for an
scale
array
it.
ref, no, that's why I said if you're checking for an array, that's what prototypes is for. For an array ref, yeah. So I think technically if you don't, so one of the things that we did kind of played with this until we got it working, and if you don't change the op sibling to a null, let me show you that.
Oh.
Over here.
No.
So this part, sorry.
He said no, please.
Sorry. I can pause. I can stop. Do you see this part that says the op sibling is now null? If you don't set it to null, it continues running the next ops, because they're defined as siblings, right?
Okay.
I'm taking the op and then basically, and if I don't actually set the sibling to a null, it continues running. So theoretically, you could do the check here. This is called a call checker, right? And then you just not go nuts with replacing it, and just allow it to continue running, checking it. Theoretically, it could be done.
Like where Croker didn't match the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Theoretically, I think you could do that. Would it be bad? I don't know. Might not be. The tricky part with this, this is actually why it would be good and why it would be bad to move it to core if it was like, of course, voted in, and probably wouldn't be. But the good thing is that the bad part is that it's ops, and the op tree might change. Technically it shouldn't, but at the same time you have optimizers, you have other people doing stuff, and it's always tricky to work with the op tree in any language. The op tree is always, a very raw format that passes through optimizers and stuff like that. But at the same time, the people who would know the most about the ops are not me. So if the ops change, it would be easier for someone who knows the ops to change it, but at the same time, that's a reason not to maintain it. A lot of modules that use ops are fragile in that sense. In pretty much every language I've seen, actually. So it's shameful, but it's a certain risk that comes along with it. Any other questions? Yes?
Could you never use purple on black again? Because I can read pretty much everything else on your slides, but the purple on black made me go blind.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't. From here, it's totally.
I'm sure it looks really great when you're really like a meter away,
I
but
think I changed it explicitly because of something, and I'll double check. Or actually, this is the Vim output. I'm sorry, this is the Vim output.
Well, you can educate Vim.
The slides are generating HTML from Vim syntax files. I'll
Or
fix
maybe
it
it's
with-
what you're running it on. I know if I try to,
No, I can fix it with CSS.
Oh.
I'll do that. I've heard there's a way to change colors in CSS.
you can make it pink.
30 lines in four
Yeah,
before.
pink, yeah.
But
Well, pink would be readable because it would be light and it would be kind of in the purple family, so it won't clash with any of the other colors. You'll know that it's a different type of, you can see it's a name.
But maybe pink's from used for
Good,
something
good
else.
point.
It's the only thing pink's.
Another color question?
Yeah, I'd like the comment blue to be a little bit darker, to fall behind a little bit, which is just won't run on top.
Good point. Good
And
point.
that's it?
Yeah, that's it, otherwise,
Okay.
Alright.
Make the comments even less readable?
well, they should, fall back a little bit, just gently, not too much.
Mm.
How do you like the 3D?
Great talk, great talk.
I'll pause. Thank you very much.